For 40 years, he said goodnight. Mom to the woman who confessed today in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom that she was his real mother's killer. But where was his real mother? Where had she been hiding the body? Asterisk the routine inheritance case that began at exactly 9:30 a.m. in the federal courthouse in Boston would become one of the most shocking files in American judicial history. Judge Frank Caprio had seen thousands of cases in his 30-year career, but the truth that would emerge today would leave even him speechless. Michael Thompson, 42 years old, was an ordinary man who ran a small accounting firm in Boston. Sitting beside him was 68-year-old Margaret Thompson, the woman who had been known as his loving mother for 40 years, or so they thought. "Your Honor," said Michael, rising to his feet while adjusting the documents in his hand. "There's a dispute regarding the house and $200,000 inheritance specified in my mother Margaret Thompson's will. Our neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez claims the house actually belongs to her." Frank Caprio adjusted his glasses and began examining the file. At first glance, it appeared to be a simple estate dispute. Margaret Thompson had been living in that house since 1985 according to the records. However, neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez claimed the house actually belonged to her missing friend Linda Thompson, and that Margaret had no right to live there. "Mrs. Rodriguez," said Frank Caprio, turning to the elderly woman, "do you have any documents to support your claims?" Mrs. Rodriguez, in her 70s and frail, stood up. She held old photographs and documents in her hands. "Your Honor, I knew Linda Thompson for 30 years. She was my closest friend. In 1985, she disappeared one day. We reported it to the police, but no trace was ever found. Then a few months later, this woman," she said pointing to Margaret, "came and said she was Linda's sister." Margaret Thompson sat quietly. There was a strange expression on her face, as if she knew this moment she had been waiting for so long had finally arrived. Frank Caprio looked at the photographs. In the old black and white photos, there was a woman who looked very similar to Margaret but still different. "Mrs. Thompson," said Frank Caprio, "is this you in these photographs?" Margaret slowly shook her head. "No, Your Honor, that's Linda Thompson, my sister." "And where is your sister now?" Margaret's hand began to tremble. Michael looked at his mother with concern. He had never seen the woman he had lived with for 40 years this nervous. "Your Honor," said Mrs. Rodriguez, "here's where there's something strange. Linda Thompson never had a sister. She was an only child. I was her closest friend. I knew everything about her family." Silence fell over the courtroom. Frank Caprio looked at Margaret. The woman's face had gone pale. "Mrs. Thompson, what do you say to this claim?" Margaret remained silent for a long time. Then she slowly stood up. "Your Honor," her voice was trembling, "I'm ready to tell the truth." Michael looked at his mother in confusion. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Margaret looked at her son, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. "Michael, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been hiding for a very long time." Frank Caprio leaned forward. His 30 years of experience told him that an important confession was coming. "Mrs. Thompson, please continue." Margaret took a deep breath. "My name is not Margaret Thompson. My real name is Margaret Foster. And Linda Thompson," she paused, as if struggling to get the words out. "I killed Linda Thompson." The courtroom fell silent. Michael straightened in his chair, his eyes wide. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm not your real mother, Michael," said Margaret, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Your real mother was Linda Thompson, and I killed her in 1985. Frank Caprio signaled to the court bailiff. This confession needed to be recorded. "Mrs. Foster, do you understand what you're saying?" "Yes, Your Honor. I've carried this secret for 40 years. I can't bear it anymore." Michael jumped to his feet. "This is impossible. You're my mother. We've lived together for 40 years. You raised me." Margaret gave him a pained look. "No, Michael. I raised you after Linda died. You were only 2 years old then. You don't remember what happened." Frank Caprio tried to maintain control of the situation. "Mrs. Foster, please tell us from the beginning. What happened?" Margaret sat down in her chair, clasping her hands together. "In 1985, I was Linda's babysitter. Michael was still very young. And Linda was working as a single mother. I took care of him during the day. She paused, trying to gather her memories. Linda was a very beautiful woman. She would captivate everyone. And I had never married, never had children. I always thought about how much I wanted to be Michael's mother. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her hand to her mouth. Dear God, that night Linda came home late. She had been drinking. She told me I no longer needed to take care of Michael, that she had found another babysitter. I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. Frank Caprio had started taking notes. What happened next? We started arguing. She was yelling at me, telling me to leave the house. I hugged her, told her I didn't want to go. She pushed me, and I pushed her back. Margaret's voice grew quieter. Linda was standing at the top of the stairs. When I pushed her, she lost her balance and fell down the stairs. She broke her neck. She died instantly. A deep silence filled the courtroom. Everyone held their breath. What did you do next? Asked Frank Caprio. I panicked. But then, I made a plan. Linda had no close relatives. She was only friends with Mrs. Rodriguez. But she didn't visit often. I already resembled Linda. People would confuse us. Margaret stood up and walked toward the window. I took Linda's body to the basement. I buried it under the concrete floor there. Then I took her identity. I cut my hair like hers. I started dressing like her. Michael had put his head in his hands. This can't be real. Michael was so young that he didn't notice. I was already taking care of him during the day. I just started staying at night too. I taught him to call me Mom. Frank Caprio continued questioning. Didn't anyone suspect? At first, Mrs. Rodriguez asked questions, but I told her Linda wanted to move to another city with Michael. Over time, everyone forgot. I continued living as Linda Thompson. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up. For 40 years, I've wondered where my friend was. I prayed for her so much. Margaret looked at her. I'm sorry, Maria. I'm truly sorry. Frank Caprio signaled to the court bailiff. Mrs. Foster, you will be taken into custody. They will read you your Miranda rights. Michael jumped up. Wait, she's my mother. She may have made a mistake, but she raised me. She loved me for 40 years. Margaret looked at her son one last time. Michael, I truly loved you. You were the most beautiful part of my life, but you need to respect your real mother's memory. Linda loved you very much. As the bailiffs approached Margaret, she made one more confession. Your Honor, Linda's diary is also in the basement, next to the body. It writes about how much she loved you, Michael. She wrote about you every day. Michael was left in tears. His 40-year life was a lie. But at the same time, the woman who raised him had truly loved him. Frank Caprio postponed the case to the next hearing. Police would go to the house to dig up the basement and find Linda Thompson's body and diary. As the courtroom emptied, Mrs. Rodriguez approached Michael. Michael, your mother Linda was truly a wonderful woman. She loved you very much. Margaret did wrong, but it's also true that she raised you well. Michael looked up. How will I live now? My 40-year life is a lie. No, said Mrs. Rodriguez. You are real. You're Linda's son. And the love Margaret showed you was also real, even if it came from the wrong path. The investigation commenced. The courtroom emptied. Frank Caprio sat at his desk, trying to process what had just happened. In his 30-year career, he had never experienced such a complex emotional drama. A woman had played the perfect mother role for 40 years, but the foundation of this role was murder. The next day, when police went to the house Margaret had mentioned, they began digging up the basement. Michael was there too. The idea of searching for his real mother's body under his own house was an indescribable feeling for him. At 2:30 p.m., the shovel hit something metal. Police began digging more carefully. About an hour later, Linda Thompson's body was uncovered. Despite being underground for 40 years, her bones and some clothing fragments were still intact. Next to the body, they also found the diary Margaret had mentioned. It had been placed in a waterproof box, as if Margaret wanted it to be found someday. It had been carefully preserved. When Michael took the diary in his hands were trembling. This was his real mother's handwriting, his real mother's thoughts. When he opened the first page, he read, March 15, 1985. Michael said, Mama, to me today, for the first time. My heart will burst with happiness. This little angel is the meaning of my life. I can do anything for him." Michael's eyes filled with tears. Pages were filled with lines showing how much his real mother loved him. March 28, 1985. Michael got sick. I sat by his bedside all night. Margaret is very helpful, but sometimes there's a strange look in her eyes when she looks at Michael. She acts as if she's his mother too. It's a bit unsettling, but she takes such good care of Michael that I can't complain. Reading these lines, Michael froze. His real mother had noticed something strange in Margaret's behavior. In the diary's final days, Linda's concerns had increased. April 10th, 1985. I talked to Margaret. I told her I had found a new babysitter. Her reaction was very strange. She started crying and said she couldn't leave Michael. I told her she could continue until I found a new babysitter, but she looked very upset. The last entry was dated April 12th, 1985. The night Margaret confessed to, Margaret was acting very strange today. The way she looked at Michael was as if she was saying goodbye. I asked her what was wrong, but she didn't say anything. I need to talk to her tonight. Something is going wrong. After this last entry, the page was blank. Linda Thompson had been killed that night. Frank Caprio wanted to delve deeper into the case. When he investigated Margaret Foster's past, shocking details emerged. Margaret's childhood had been difficult. Her own mother had abandoned her when she was 5 years old. She had grown up among foster families. She had never received real love. In her 20s, she had tried to get married, but her husband had cheated on her and left. Later, she had tried to have a child but could never get pregnant. Doctors told her she could never be a mother. These traumas had greatly affected Margaret psychologically. When she met Linda Thompson and Michael, she felt like she belonged to a family for the first time in her life. Court psychiatrist Dr. Jennifer Walsh, after examining Margaret, presented her report to Frank Caprio. Margaret Foster suffers from severe abandonment fear and maternal obsession. Her killing of Linda Thompson was not planned. It was a sudden burst of anger. However, what she did afterward was completely calculated. Her playing this role for 40 years shows how deep a psychological disorder she has. Margaret was in custody. Michael visited her. This difficult conversation would change both their lives forever. "Why?" asked Michael, looking at Margaret through the glass. "Why did you lie to me for years?" Margaret answered with tears streaming from her eyes. "Because I was afraid of losing you. You were the only meaning in my life. If I had told the truth, I would have lost you. But you also stole my real mother from me," said Michael. "I never had the chance to meet her." "I know," said Margaret, "and I regret it every day. But Michael, the love I felt for you was real. Every bedtime story, every school meeting, every sadness. It was all real." Michael shook his head. "I know, that's why it hurts so much. I can't stop loving you, but I also hate you. I don't ask you to forgive me," said Margaret. "Just know this, Linda truly loved you very much. I read her diaries. For years, you were everything to her." Margaret Foster's trial lasted for months. The defense attorney argued that Margaret was mentally ill, citing her psychological condition. However, her flawless performance of this role for 40 years showed how consciously she had acted. In the final hearing, Frank Caprio addressed Margaret. "Mrs. Foster, you raised a child with love for 40 years. This is an undeniable fact. However, this love came at the cost of another person's life. The murder of Linda Thompson and the theft of her identity are unforgivable crimes. No matter how well-intentioned." Margaret stood up. "Your Honor, I want to say this last thing. The love I gave Michael was real, but I know that the lie underlying this love tainted him and Linda's memory. I deserve my punishment." Frank Caprio delivered his verdict. "I sentence Margaret Foster to 25 years in prison for second-degree murder, identity theft, and document forgery. However, considering the dedication she showed while raising Michael Thompson, parole will be possible after 15 years. After Linda's body was found, Mrs. Rodriguez became Michael's spiritual mother. She shared everything she knew about Linda with Michael. "Your mother used to sing to you when feeding you at midnight," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "One day, always the same song, 'You Are My Sunshine.' You loved that song too." As Michael learned these details, he began to feel his connection with his real mother. These were things Margaret had never told him. Linda was a very strong woman, Mrs. Rodriguez continued. She was raising you alone, but never complained. You were her pride, her joy, the meaning of her life. When the news reached the press, the neighborhood was shaken. Learning that the woman they had known as Margaret Thompson for 40 years was actually a killer deeply affected everyone. Neighbor Jane Morrison said, Margaret always seemed like a perfect mother. She attended every event at Michael's school. We never suspected anything about her. However, some neighbors remembered some oddities when they looked back. Margaret never talked about the past. She never spoke of her family, her past. She didn't like having her picture taken. Now that I think about it, said neighbor Tom Bradley, Margaret had a house, but we never saw old belongings, old photos. It was as if she had never lived before 1985. After the truth came out, Michael's life completely changed. He changed his name to Michael Linda Thompson. He wanted to keep his mother's memory alive. He sold his accounting firm and established the Linda Thompson Foundation. This foundation helped single mothers. He wanted to help other mothers live the life his real mother couldn't. Every year on April 12th, the day his mother was killed, he would go to her grave and read letters he wrote to her. In these letters, he would tell his mother everything that had happened. Hello, Mom, he would always begin. I'm Michael, your son. I never got to know you, but I talk to you every day. Margaret became a quiet and withdrawn prisoner in prison. Other inmates knew her story. Some tried to understand her, while others treated her like a child killer. Margaret's cellmate, Rosa Martinez, said she cried every night. Margaret constantly asks, is my Michael okay? Even after 40 years, she's still experiencing the pain of losing him. Margaret's prison psychiatrist, Dr. Amanda Foster, coincidentally the same last name, recorded her sessions with Margaret. The patient cannot understand the difference between real love and obsession. She sees the love she felt for Michael as real, and therefore tries to justify what she did. However, she also knows that what she did to Linda was terrible. This internal conflict is destroying her. This case that took place in Frank Caprio's courtroom was discussed throughout America. Psychologists, lawyers, sociologists began studying this case. Dr. Sarah Chen from Harvard University's psychology department said in her statement, this case shows how maternal instinct can be distorted. Margaret Foster truly loved Michael, but this love was not healthy. Possessiveness was perceived as love. Legal experts noted that the failure to detect identity theft for such a long time showed gaps in the system. After the case ended, Frank Caprio told reporters, I've been a judge for 30 years, but this case was one of the most affecting cases. We saw how complex human nature can be. A woman committed a terrible crime, but at the same time raised a child with real love. This paradox is a difficult situation to evaluate. However, he continued, justice sometimes means facing painful truths. Linda Thompson's memory and her family's rights had to be protected. 6 months after the case, Michael Thompson visited his mother's grave. Linda Thompson's body had been found and buried next to Mrs. Rodriguez. Margaret Foster had received a life sentence. Michael had inscribed on the tombstone, Linda Thompson, my beloved mother. I never knew you, but I remember you every day. And below, Margaret Foster, love that came from the wrong path but was real. I won't forget you either. Sitting by the grave, Michael hummed the song his mother loved, You Are My Sunshine. He had learned this song from Mrs. Rodriguez. That day the wind was blowing gently, and Michael felt as if his mother was listening to him. After 40 years, he could finally talk to her. Mom, he said quietly, I'm very sorry I couldn't know you, but my promise is this, I will keep your memory alive, and I will help other mothers experience the happiness you couldn't. The truth that emerged in Frank Caprio's courtroom had revealed the complex nature of love, crime, and forgiveness. Sometimes the biggest lies can arise from the deepest loves, but truth, no matter how painful, always finds a way to surface. The story would continue until Margaret Foster's conditional release after 15 years. Then they would meet again, and perhaps then, both could truly leave the past behind.